Welcome to St. John's Unitarian Universalist Church. We've come together today to celebrate the life of Charles Seibert. Our service is a little informal today because Charles asked that we lean into being together and celebrating rather than on formality. We're in the sanctuary because it gives us the ability to have folks join us online or even watch the service later. After our celebration in here, we will have ice cream in Krollpfeifer. And if you're new to St. John's, you can get there by going down those stairs and across the hall through the double doors. You'll probably smell or see or sense the ice cream. And if you need a restroom, head down the same stairs, but turn right before you get to the doors. Or you can just ask someone who looks like they know their way around. Here at St. John's and in Unitarian Universalist congregations, we start our worship services and celebrations like this with a chalice lighting. So we're going to do that today. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." So we light this chalice in memory of Charles, a man who asked deep questions, who sought to understand not just this world, but his place within it. Charles lived with intention. He reflected, wrestled, wondered. He didn't take life for granted, but turned it over in his hands, looking for meaning, for truth, for growth. To remember him is not only to recall what he did, but how he thought, how he cared, how he tried to learn, to be present, to be good. The flame we kindle now honors the light he brought into our lives, a searching one, honest and real. May this light remind us to live thoughtfully, to love courageously, and to carry forward the questions Charles asked and the life he examined with care.
We're going to be singing number 368 in your hymnal. Now let us sing. There's a lower portion and an upper portion. I'm going to be singing the lower portion, but feel free to sing the upper portion and rise and body your spirit if you'd like. Now let us sing, sing. Now let us sing, lift up your voice, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing. Now let us sing, lift up your voice, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the hope within. Now let us sing. Now let us sing, lift up your voice, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the love within. Now let us sing. Now let us sing, lift up your voice, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the joy within.
Charles and I were students in the 60s, deeply influenced by the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. I'm going to read some excerpts from the 1963 letter King wrote while imprisoned in the Birmingham jail. You may well ask, why direct action? Why sit-ins, marches, and so forth? Isn't negotiation a better path? Nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and foster such a tension that a community which has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. It seeks so to dramatize the issue that it can no longer be ignored. My citing this tension as part of our work of nonviolent resistance may sound rather shocking, but I must confess I am not afraid of the word tension. I have entirely opposed violent tension, but there's a type of constructive nonviolent tension which is necessary for growth. We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. We must come to see, with one of our distinguished jurists, that, quote, justice too long delayed is justice denied, end quote. There comes a time when the cup of endurance runs over, and men are no longer willing to be plunged into the abyss of despair. Human progress never rolls in on wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts of men willing to be co-workers with God, and without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the forces of social stagnation. We must use time creatively in the knowledge that the time is always ripe to do right. There are two types of laws, just and unjust. I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. I would agree with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly.
Charles Seibert Sr. and Irma on November 29th of 1940, near the beginning of World War II. He shared his childhood with his sisters Jennifer and Judy. And from an early age, Charles was intensely smart and curious, deeply interested in the world around him. He stood out, even as a youth. He was a champion swimmer and physically active in a variety of ways. He served as class president and did well in school, earning his bachelor's degree from Wesleyan University and his master's from Tulane. He began his doctoral studies at Northwestern University, where he encountered challenges, not academically, but with the world around him. In the 1960s, Charles witnessed a society grappling with inequality, where people of color and those living in poverty were disproportionately sent to Vietnam, while white individuals with financial means were often spared. He saw how people of color were treated, and although the McCarthy era had ended, its chilling effects still lingered. Charles wrote about this experience in an article titled, "The Ghost of Senator Joe McCarthy Haunts a Philosophy Graduate Student." His reflection revealed both his commitment to standing against injustice and the personal cost he paid for doing so. While at Northwestern, Charles and other students noticed a black student was repeatedly denied housing. They spoke up and successfully lobbied for a policy requiring that any housing posted on the university bulletin board be offered without discrimination based on race, religion, or ethnic origin. This effort led to the formation of the Northwestern Students for Civil Rights, with Charles elected president. As their activism grew, so did the backlash. Charles became a target. He was accused of being a communist and was ultimately pushed out of the university. But that didn't stop his work for justice. Despite the consequences, he continued his civil rights efforts, and the experience taught him powerful lessons and came at a personal cost, including that he had to find another university to complete his degree. And because he refused to lie about this past, he was sometimes turned away from jobs. During this time, Charles also published books and remained deeply committed to his values, demonstrating both integrity and conviction throughout his life. I encourage you to read about his experience if you get the chance. He went on to earn his PhD in philosophy from DePaul University. Through his life, Charles stayed active, biking, running, gardening, swimming, and he even became a yoga instructor. And then in 1994, he was offered a tenure-track position as a professor at the University of Cincinnati. As often happens in life, Cincinnati wasn't exactly where he expected to end up, but the city brought more joy than he could know. During his time in Illinois, Charles had become a Unitarian Universalist. And upon moving to Cincinnati, he looked for a congregation. He visited St. John's and met Sarah on his first visit. She was organizing a hike for the Lively After 40 group. I was introduced to Charles as someone who might be interested in the outing. Sarah says it was his sparkly eyes, his face, and his personality that caught her attention that day. The two became friends and bonded over a mutual interest in world religions. In fact, they taught world religions classes together at St. John's for many years. Any of you in the room take those classes? A few of you. Charles loved to teach and brought that passion into every aspect of his life, including his time at St. John's. In addition to the classes he co-taught with Sarah, he offered others on timely topics. For example, after 9/11, he led a class on Islam to help people understand better what was being said about Muslims. He also participated regularly in the men's group at St. John's, forming close and lasting friendships with members of the group who have met together for decades. After 7 years of friendship, Charles surprised Sarah with a lovely dinner and a trip to Mount Echo in 2001. During that trip, he offered an engagement ring. She accepted. They married in 2002, and with that, Charles' family grew to include children and eventually grandchildren, in addition to his sisters and their families. Charles lived a bright, examined life. He cared deeply about truth, integrity, and the people around him. When I visited him in hospice, our conversations often centered on Sarah, his love for her and concern for her well-being, and his care for the St. John's community. He was a good friend and a brilliant person. When Sarah talked to Charles about what he hoped we might do today, he asked for an ice cream social, saying he wanted people to be kind to one another, to get to know each other, to enjoy themselves, and to be happy. As his obituary says, Charles was a beacon of knowledge and grace in the lives of all who had the privilege to know him. We are blessed to have had that privilege. Even as we grieve, may we remember and carry forward that grace, care, and compassion that he brought to us. Blessed be.
We'll be singing in the hymnal number 346, Come Sing a Song with Me. Rise and bow to your spirit if you'd like. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
As you'll see in the order of service, this is a time for open sharing. And Charles' stepdaughter, Kirsten, will come first.
It's been a long time since I've been in a room with so many Unitarian Universalists, and just being here and seeing all of you coming to remember Charles, it's very clear why they both, my mom and Charles, felt so at home here. So thank you for being here. I'm fairly certain that Charles, the accomplished, jazz-loving, yoga-mastering, world religion and philosophy teaching, adventure-seeking, ethically living, philosopher Charles Peirce expert and lifelong bachelor had no plans to be a parent when he married my mom in 2002. But he was a natural. Had I been able to pick a spouse for my mom, a son-in-law for my grandmother, a father-in-law for my husband, Patrick, an amazing granddad to our late dog, Bowie, and a father for me, I would have and would still have ordered a Charles Henry Seibert. I admire Charles. There is no one else like him. His clever sense of humor, interesting observations, and sincerity are qualities that were amplified through his spirit, his consistent demonstration of empathy, intelligence, generosity, and fairness. It made me proud and thankful. But you should also know that Charles would wear a very tall elf hat to our house on Christmas. It was really tall. He would pick a book for me as a gift and was always a topic that I was interested in and always felt especially personal and thoughtful. He never complained, except maybe about certain politicians, and if he swore, it was genuinely funny. He always came out to the kitchen while I cleaned up after a meal to personally thank me. And if Charles loved you, it was unconditionally. I am sad. I really miss Charles, but mostly I am so grateful that I got to call him my dad.
Now Charles' sister, Jennifer.
I'm the baby sister. And I didn't know until the last minute if I could just stand here and do this. We knew him as Charlie, and he was one of my most favorite people on the planet. When I called his childhood friend, George Ditmore, to tell him of Charles's passing, George said, "Oh, okay, I've got stories. And the first one he told me was, I remember the night you were born, Jennifer. I don't remember it. I was busy being born. And he said, yep, my dad, Dr. Ditmore, took us all to the movies downtown, and every 15 minutes or so, Charlie would disappear. It turned out he had darted out into the lobby to call home to see if I had been born yet. What 13-year-old does that?" And that's what I said to George. I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, he loved you before he met you." And Charles was a rebel. We lived in a house. I grew up in a house. Judy grew up in the same house. That was a mirror image across the driveway of our aunt and uncle's house. And the porches faced that shared driveway, and so did the front doors. And one day, Charlie found a long length of rope, and he tied both beautiful old brass door handles together across the driveway, and then he proceeded to ring both doorbells. And boy, was our dad pissed. Really, really pissed. And the third and final thing I'll tell is that Charlie was always a teacher, always. I remember his coming home from school and saying, I'm going to teach you a really long word. And I said, okay, because he was my hero. Never in my young life had I felt so free and dangerous and safe at the same time than when I was perched on the front handlebars of his English two-wheeler, racing through the streets. Long. We didn't tell Mom or Dad. But he sat me down, and he was a very patient teacher. And he was my hero, so I was really willing to go through all kinds of stuff, and he broke this word down. And, you know, I've never been the best student. I wasn't the brightest bulb in our family, for sure. And I made it through, kind of. I'll tell you this. I was 5 years old, and the word was anti-disestablishmentarianism. Look it up because it's poignant right now. So anyway, those are some of my pieces of Charles to share with you. And thank you all for being his church home.
How wonderful that this is being recorded, so Sarah will be able to, when the rehab is done, or earlier if possible, see what the family has had to offer. It's still not an open mic, because I want to go next, and then give Nina the mic before we let anybody else come up. I have, however, limited myself to no more than 3 minutes, because I think I want to be a model for others who should also take no longer than they need to, so that everybody who wants to get the mic has an opportunity to do so. It came of a bitter surprise to learn from Jennifer that she called him Charlie, my good friend Charles. I didn't think Charlie was a handle that quite fit the extraordinary scholar, philosopher, educator, and activist I knew. We shared academic roles as faculty members at the U of Cincinnati, collaborated for years on justice projects at St. John's. We engaged with soulmates in our retired old men eating out Romeo lunch group here today in support roles. And despite broad areas of agreement between us, we repeatedly had professorial debates that must have baffled or bored our mutual friends. Charles argued that Unitarian Universalism could not be a religion with a theology, since it lacked a doctrine that recognized a deity. But I responded that for me, UU commitments were faith-based religious values. Before I knew him, you've heard that Charles had suffered the consequences of standing up for civil rights of minorities victimized by discrimination. His unwavering commitment to equal rights inspired his lengthy engagement in our work here at St. John's. Nevertheless, Charles repeatedly challenged my use of the term race in the justice work we did, since that concept was based on junk science. We repeatedly engaged in what our non-academic listeners must have found semantic quibbling about race matters. However, we often found ourselves jointly at odds with the St. John's board members on issues related to church bylaws and other difficult governance matters. Charles thought deeply about those issues, and he wrote to them often at great length, expressing his analysis that usually had little or no observable influence. I greatly admired his service as a worship associate in this sanctuary and as instructor of adult RE classes that revealed no hint whatever of the frustration he felt. When I realized Charles shared my interest in swimming, he accepted an invitation to do some laps with me at the Clifton Meadows pool that we greatly enjoyed. How sad that I didn't get to know more of that Charlie, who in so many ways will be greatly missed by friends and family. Nina?
I met Charles before either of us came to St. John's. We were in a yoga group, and we were practicing together for quite a long time before we decided to come. And the class was happening at the, now I forget the name of the place, the church in, Howard, where did we go to? No, not in Yellow Springs, here in Cincinnati, Northern Hills Fellowship. And we practiced there for quite a while before Howard and I and the family came to St. John's. And then later on, Charles decided to come to St. John's also. And that's when I had already started the meditation group, and he started to join me. And he was a very faithful meditator and always came on a regular basis. So we spent a lot of time together in a silent mode, didn't talk with each other. He never shared anything about himself. So I really didn't know him as such, but I knew him as a peaceful man. And the only time he was not there was when he went to see his mother. He said he was going to see his mother. And when he went to Texas for his follow-up of treatments. And that was the only time he was not there. But he was a very compassionate partner in meditation with me.
If anyone else would like to share any stories, I invite you to come forward at this time.
Hi, my name is Jim McDonough, and I am a long-term faculty member at UC. Starting in '64, I overlapped time-wise with Charles, but I was in engineering, so the two worlds really didn't intersect until I got here at St. John's, and then we got to know each other. But I wanted to tell you that the story you heard about Charles's development was that he got a tenured faculty position at UC. And that was the last of the story. But actually, that was far from the end of his story. Charles was hired into University College, which is like the current branch campuses, but he actually was associated with the main campus. But Charles had a terrible time getting promoted. When they closed down that college, he had a very difficult time finding a place in the main campus. And that was an ongoing struggle to the last day at the university, was getting the recognition that he so deeply deserved as a faculty member. So he had to fight that battle years before UC, and then that battle continued at a somewhat different level. But I think relative to his engagements at UC, Charles had hoped for a lot more recognition of his ability as a scholar than he got. Thank you.
I'm David. To me, he was Uncle Chuck. And the picture of him that was showing earlier, standing on his head, the thing that left out was the quarters that fell out when he did that. The other thing I will pass on to you is that when we saw him in the last weeks of his life, he said that he is going to leave this world as ignorant as he came into it, a fierce agnostic.
So I'm Tony. I'm a newcomer relative to St. John's, and the way I know Charles was through the men's group and the Romeo group too, but mainly the men's group. I'm a retired construction worker. Again, haven't been here that long, but I really grew to. I just want to pay my respects to the family because I really grew to appreciate Charles. And three things that came to mind. The first thing that came to mind, the guy could enunciate. He could speak so clearly. I never heard anybody speak so clearly. You could spell the word after he said it. That was just striking. And then, our daughter, the reason we came here, our daughter is in the philosophy department at UC. And I appreciate him always coming up to me in groups and recognizing, that she was there. I think they overlapped in maybe 1 year, everything. But he always would come up to me when, she got a promotion or something like that and would say, "Congratulations to your daughter," And that meant a lot, to me. And then the third thing, it was when I found out his story at Northwestern and what he had to go through for that. It just really gave him a lot of respect. He walked the walk. He was a class act.
Hi, family. My name is Claire. I have known Charles and Sarah for a long time, but my most recent work with them was through Sanctuary and Immigration, and I just hadn't heard that mentioned yet today. They were like this on it in our meetings, and while they weren't able physically to always do the activities, man, were they coordinated, caring, knowledgeable, and I always appreciated that Charles, as has been said, was so brilliant. But he didn't bring it to you to tell you he was brilliant. He just calmly would share when it mattered, and he could contribute to what your understanding might be. He was a good example of how to treat others.
My name is John Kachuba, and my respects to all of you, to your family. I came to St. John's with my wife about 18 years ago, and that's when we first met Charles. And like so many others have said before, I knew Charles through Romeo, through the men's group, and especially, as Claire just mentioned, through Sanctuary and Immigration team here at St. John's. And he and Sarah were a major, major component of that. We're still around and still trying to move forward, but those two were so important to what that group did that I think it's a big loss and a big hole right now. We're trying to patch that. One thing I remember about Charles is I went to visit him in hospice, and we sat and talked. I shouldn't say we talked. Charles spoke for about 45 minutes on the most amazing things. He had three concerns. One was about Sarah, talking about Sarah, and speculating on how her life would be, and kind of worried about that, obviously. But the other two things were about the shape and size and where is Unitarian Universalism going to go, and also just about St. John's. Three things, but that was his main concern. He went on and on and on about this, and I'm thinking to myself, what bravery. If I was in hospice, knowing exactly what hospice means, I'm not sure I'd be all that, no offense, concerned about St. John's or Ukrainian Universalism at all, But that was Charles. He was always sort of one-minded like that, and he knew what he wanted to talk about, and he did. And I just listened for 45 minutes and was amazed. So I remember that.
We lit this chalice to represent the life of Charles and all that he brought to us. And we extinguish this chalice and acknowledge that as he has passed from this life, he still leaves behind that flame within each of us as we go forward. Go in peace, go in love.